How did that one kid in your high school die? Story 1 slipped while hiking on an outdoor education trip and was impaled by the cut stump of a yearling tree. He bled out before they could get him medevaced. Our school planted a tree on campus to honor him. Seriously. Story 2 suicide was getting bullied. Sad part, no one cared. His death got completely overshadowed by a popular girl that ended up driving head first into a tree. They even had the marching band and sports teams wearing ribbons for her. What did he get though? Oh, his father came by to talk about suicide and bully prevention, which got laughed at. Story 3 She asphyxiated from an unnatural position while her family was out of town. Rumor was drugs drinking and she passed out. Her parents adamantly denied this and eventually posted her autopsy results to FB to stop the lies. Teenagers are mean. Poor girl fell asleep on her couch and suffocated herself in a freak accident. Story 4 It was a really good friend. A sweet guy, very smart. During his summer job, he slumped over the cash register with no warning. By the time they got him to the hospital he was dead. Brain aneurysm. Incredibly tragic. Really made me think about how short life really is. Story 5 Accidentally shot himself while cleaning his hunting rifle. Thought it was a suicide at first, but they searched his phone and he was searching up how to clean it. Story 6 Verse 2 They were on their way to see their mother at the hospital who just gave birth to twin girls. They were hit by a drunk driver who was on his third DUI. The car caught fire. They were trapped in the back seat. The girls didn't survive. Just horrible. Their mom gives birth to 2 baby girls and loses her older 2 girls in one day. Heartbreaking. Third one was our freshman year. She was shot in the head by our other friend Brandy, who found her dad's shotgun, didn't think it was loaded, put it to Melissa's head and pulled the trigger. Story 7 She killed herself. She was only in 7th grade. It was my senior year. She was a very sweet girl. She had slowly cleaned her locker out every day so her mom wouldn't have to. Story 8 Donnie was a sickly kid with a congenital heart condition, very frail in appearance and soft-spoken, friendly with everyone and liked by most. Fell over dead with a heart attack at school. One of the coaches did CPR until paramedics arrived but didn't survive. Story 9 He and his brother were riding jet skis. His brother jumped a wave and landed on him, cut his head in half. He was dead before the jet ski stopped moving. The day after the funeral, his brother disappeared. Story 10 Got her head chopped off while floating in the lake by a drunk jet ski driver. We got the next day off from school to mourn. A less popular girl was killed by a drunk boater the following week and no day off was issued. Story 11 He climbed a power pole and touched a high-voltage wire. He had so much makeup on in his coffin he was barely recognizable. To clarify, this happened long ago. As I remember it, he was a big fan of the old animated series Spider-Man. At the time, as I remember, there was some talk that he wanted to be like the villain Electro and saw this as his way to it, but nobody really knows. Story 12 ended up killing herself because she was constantly being harassed at school and the staff did nothing about it even though her friends told the dean, principal etc. Really sucked too. She was super funny and sweet. Story 13 Small Town 5000. Right before graduation we had a girl classmate that overdosed herself on pills, and then shot herself in the head while sitting on the train track in which her car was hit by a train. Did not die. None of us ever saw her again, but years down the road I had heard that she pretty much fully recovered. When it's not your time, it's not your time. Story 14 One died during heart surgery. Another while riding in a car that got ran off the road by a semi. After HS, a girl got involved with a guy 30 years older than her and he shot her before shooting himself because his wife found out. Story 15 Accidentally shot in the back by his lifelong best friend while hunting. One was helping the other through a barbed wire fence and forgot to engage the safety. They were both my friends. The other never recovered emotionally. Story 16 Bro was diagnosed with leukemia during our vacation. He died a few weeks after we got back to school. He was 1 year below me. I never talked to him. I just knew who he was. It was a weird day. Everyone was arriving to school and suddenly everyone from his class started to cry. News spread. We only had half of classes and was sent home. Story 17 Boy was showing off his dad's gun to a group of friends, insisting there were no bullets inside. Girl keeps saying it's not funny and it's dangerous to play with any gun, loaded or unloaded. Boy points gun at girl to show her it's not loaded and pulls the trigger. I didn't know her personally, but she was in my choir class and was really nice. The boy went to a neighboring school, so I didn't know him, but I heard him and his family ended up moving to a new city. Awful all around. Story 18 Drowned. Got trapped under a tree branch, couldn't get out. Crazy. A few days before we were playing GTA talking about how we'll play next weekend to watching them lay him to rest. RIP Forever 15. Story 19 Freshman year A sophomore was crushed by a truck at his job when he was working underneath it and someone didn't realize he was there and started to drive. Sophomore year A senior died in a car accident on his way to school when he hit a patch of ice. Junior year A freshman killed himself so that he wouldn't get in trouble with his parents after they found out Head had a party while they were away. No one died senior year. But 3 fairly recent alumni died the next year. Story 20 My first year at a boarding school. I used to share a bunker bed with a mate. I slept on the top bunker while he slept on the bottom. I used to hear him cry every night, although I couldn't tell the reason why as we were kids back then. He left school for 2 years to proceed with his surgery and medications and eventually came back. Apparently he had bone cancer which was very painful. Same classroom. Then Easter came along. He went back home to his parents. The day after he went, our school announced he had sadly passed away at such a young age, 17 to 18. His cries still haunt me till this day, not in a bad way but rather sad. Story 21. Him and another guy we went to school with burglarized a house and got into a fight about what stuff was whose, and the other guy shot and killed him, then took him to his granny's house where he lived and hid him under a pile of laundry. Granny obviously finds the body and reports it to the cops. Story 22. Not my school but my sister's. A girl was there who had everything going for her, Ivy Leagues after her, top grades, acing state tests, wealthy family, lived in a nice house in a beach neighborhood, drop dead gorgeous, yeah. Her parents were away to help a set of grandparents move into assisted living, and when they got back the front door was open. They were instantly worried about her and their 3 cats. They get inside and find her in her bedroom, shot 7 times, she had no enemies, no debts, no reason anyone would want her dead. A neighbor's camera caught the guy, but he was wearing gloves, boots, and a ski mask that legit only had mesh over his eyes. Only evidence they had was that the gun was a Desert Eagle, since the bullets used were .50 AE. Fast forward a couple of years and some unrelated criminal investigations and they found their guy. Turns out it was some sort of gang initiation to kill a random child teen, and they chose her. That guy is in prison now, and will probably never see the light of day again. He's up for parole in 22 years, so if he behaves well he's out. Edit. Also worth mentioning, the cats were never found either. Story 23. He hung himself in his closet because he was bullied for being a furry. His sister is the one that found him. 1 month before he killed himself, I saw him at an anime convention in his fursuit, and so many people thought that it was so cool. That's probably the only time he felt accepted for who he was. Story 24. He never made it to high school. It was in grade 5 that it happened. His dad, a cop, shot him in the back of the head with a shotgun at near point-blank range. They went hunting after mom left for the day. She had told them no because Junior hadn't done his homework. The geese came in, and he jumped up to show his dad where they were, presumably just as dad leveled the gun. End of a family. She took the girl and left. He crawled into a bottle and eventually lost his job. I'm not sure whatever happened to them after that. They were a lovely family prior. Dad loved that boy with his all. Junior and I played hockey together. So sad it needs a country song. Story 25. Not my school, but the other school in our same town. He, 15, had been bullied relentlessly for what was reported as being antagonized for 2 days running and refused to stop when asked. The bully was a 15-year-old sophomore who had reportedly struck him in the groin and had been pelting him with various objects like erasers, paper wads, and more. Dude asked him to stop, and he apparently didn't. So he finally snapped one day and waited outside a class they had just finished and punched the bully in the head twice, who reportedly didn't see it coming. He fell back, hit his head on a wall, and was dead the next day. Police actually refused to charge him with anything other than simple assault misdemeanor and said if any other charges were wanted, it would have to come from the DA. He was found guilty of aggravated assault misdemeanor and sentenced to time served and walked free, as well as the felony conviction expunged. Whether you or he believed it justified is another story. Edit accuracy. Story 26. Brain amoeba. When swimming in a very popular lake here in Central Florida, apparently the water was too warm. When he went in for a swim, water got in his nose and the amoeba got in his brain. Was gone within a week. 6th grade, RIP JB. Story 27. We had an asthma attack out on the track. A drunken 4 a.m. 100 miles per hour drive into a tree, a flipped over 3-wheeler, and a suicide in which they survived, but they absolutely were not even remotely the same person when they eventually came back, all sad, and all super unfortunate. There were more, but these are the ones I remember. Story 28. 1-person car accident. He was one of my best friends. He was a car guy, so I like to think he died doing something he loved. It was a punch in the gut seeing it in the news and hearing his name. Story 29. He was the big swinging of high school and was used to mouthing off to anyone because everyone would back down. Then he mouthed off to the wrong person at a party and got shot, dead at 18. Story 31. Kid hunting accident, tripped and shotgun blew his face off. Car accident, lost control coming over a hill. Car hit steel bridge. Killed 2. Go-kart accident, hit parked car. Broken neck, playing chicken on minibikes at night. 1 dead. 1 badly injures brother of steel bridge victim. Story 31. My Facebook had a friend suggestion like a year ago from a guy I went to high school with but never talked to. I was a loner and he was one of the popular guys. I peeped, just to see how his life turned out. He was a recovering addict and had moved to Florida where I also live now and seemed to be doing well. He wasn't the hot jock he was in high school, but he had a support group and was avidly posting about his sobriety and rebuilding his life. Then, maybe like a month ago, an actual high school friend posted his obituary with a GoFundMe attached. He overdosed. It's devastating, not because we were friends or anything. Just that it seems to be the reason for the most deaths I hear or know about these days. My own brother overdosed in a bathroom on Valentine's Day, while his friends were all in the living room partying. Don't do drugs, folks. It's not as fun as it sounds and it will ruin or end your life. Story 32. A girl 3 years older than me was brutally raped and nearly killed by her neighbor. She survived, but it affected her so badly mentally that a few years later she jumped out of a window. She survived that too, but was left disabled. She spent years doing interviews and slowly rebuilding her will to live. People donated loads of money so she could get a wheelchair-friendly flat and access special physical therapy that might help her walk again. She seemed to be in a much better place. She even had a boyfriend and was talking about maybe having kids one day. Then she got an infection after one of her many spinal surgeries and died of sepsis a few days later. Story 33 fell off a grad booze cruise and drowned. Field trip to movie theater, climbed rock wall, fell and died. Driving a moped and got hit by a truck, cancer, OD, hit by multiple cars during lunch break. The Goths actually ran a memorial group in high school since we had so many people die over the years. Story 34 seniors used to camp out on the football field on the last day. My friend, as a sophomore, had a motorcycle, and on that morning one of the seniors wanted to ride it. My friend said okay, but he was going to be on back, riding through the parking lot. A car pulled out and the bike hit it square. The senior lived, but my friend went through the windows of the car and died instantly. Story 35 He had a punching bag hanging from a tree in his backyard. He had climbed the tree to take it down and adjust it while his little sister was nearby. The story I heard is that he was holding the loose chain up to his neck and making choking sounds to try to get a rise out of his sister. She rolled her eyes and went inside, but a short while later she noticed a strange silence. She went back out and found him hanging from the tree. Apparently while he was pretending to hang himself, he slipped and actually hanged himself. Story 36 He took a corner too fast and his car plunged into a deep pond. Nobody witnessed it, and the car wasn't found until 11 years later when someone witnessed a car flying through the air and landing in the same pond. The divers found my classmate's car, the car that was witnessed going in, and another vehicle that went missing in the 50s. Total of 5 deaths. Story 37 He was having an affair with a married woman who was his teacher's assistant and substitute. When her husband found out, he found the kid and shot him. Made the national news in fact. Story 38 Texting and driving on an icy morning. Poor thing was on life support for months and then just didn't pull through. It makes me crazy how many people are on their phone while they drive nowadays. That kills people. Story 39 wasn't high school but the last day of 8th grade. It was optional if we went to school or not. About half of my very small rural community class went 10 out of 20. A girl whose family had a farm didn't go to school that day. She was at home and decided to drive a half-mile down a gravel road to surprise her dad with lunch. She lost control, overcorrected, flipped the vehicle and was pronounced dead at the scene. Our principal told a few of us at school shortly before the end of the day. Absolutely brutal for the community and especially her family. Story 40 Him and his brother were messing around with his dad's service pistol. He got shot in the stomach by accident and he died at the hospital, lived 15 years and has been gone for 16. Story 41 4 of the senior class played hooky. They were going too fast getting off the off-ramp and ran into a light pole. Passengers wasn't wearing a seatbelt and went flying. School counselors were in the next day. 2 of my classmates knew her well, I didn't. Story 42 He was evidently cleaning a gun, and his sister picked it up. According to the police report, she accidentally shot him. Many years later a mutual friend would confide in me that it was not an accident, and did not divulge any particular motivation other than she was sick of his. When I have told this story previously I have been directed to talk to authorities, but this was nearly 3 decades ago and I cannot recall the full name of the person who told me nor any of the people I recall being in their circle of friends, and whatever attempts I've made to look them up on socials have gone basically nowhere. Story 43 Nobody died in school. 1 year later 8 dead. For in a car wreck, 1 murdered, 1 suicide, 1 cancer, the other I don't know but a pretty odd statistic. Story 44 9th grade girl got pregnant during our summer break leading up to junior year. The boyfriend was apparently not a stable guy and got increasingly more erratic as the reality of being a teen father got closer. Early into freshman year he holds her hostage, goes to some old factory or warehouse and kills her and himself in a double murder-suicide. Very sad case. About a year later a girl would walk into an upcoming train as her form of suicide. Was a very rough year in my school. Thankfully nothing else, but we did have like 3 math teachers have varying cases of inappropriate behavior with students. Story 45 Throughout my 4 years in high school we had about 1 suicide a year and many more attempts. The students have been pretty awful and the counselors are glorified secretaries with the ability to help students but never cared enough to. Story 46 My friend and a group of her friends went to the beach for our senior year spring break. Within 30 minutes she and her friend were pulled to sea by a rip current. He was lost at sea from Friday to very early Monday morning. She washed into the surf after about 14 minutes and died 8 days later after being declared brain dead. If you ever get caught in a rip, don't fight it and don't swim, float. Story 47 One of the more popular kids, good guy, wicked sense of humor, got along with everybody, died in a motorcycle accident. He slid off the road and hit a tree, died when he just 17. Story 48 Car crash with a deputy. For kids on the way back from band practice, deputy was transporting a 2-year-old and her mom to the hospital, no survivors. Story 49 They had since graduated when this happened, but a guy a few grades ahead of me went missing in the woods in Minnesota. He was out fishing. Found his truck but they never found any sign of him. He was very experienced being out in nature and often went fishing on his own. It's been at least 15 years since he went missing. Story 50 Okay, so not my high school, my son's graduating class of 24, small rural town. By about 2 years after graduation 13 were dead, a couple suicides, a bizarre hiking bouldering fall, during a routine surgery, a work accident, a snowmobile accident. They started calling it the cursed class, which still upsets my son when someone says that. It was coincidental if you took that age group and compared it nationally, like they'd be 8 kids out of how many? It just so happened these 8 were in a small community, so everyone was aware. My high school was big enough. I was in line with a kid I had never seen during the whole 4 years. Story 51. My best friend from high school was murdered by the father of the child she was 6 months pregnant with. He beat her to death with a hammer, in front of her 2-year-old daughter, who was the only survivor. We were 19. Story 52. She was crowned homecoming queen that Friday evening while driving the 15 miles to school the next Monday morning. She drove her compact sedan into the back of a large tractor at 70 miles per hour while putting her makeup on. Story 53. Driven out to a field in Anoka and lured out of the car under the expectation of burning a joint. Shot multiple times from behind over a measly $740. Story 54. Had a diabetic low after a night of drinking. It was a New Year's party in northern Canada, so it was -30 outside. Didn't want to inconvenience anyone, so decided to walk home by himself. Passed out in a field on the way and froze to death. Rip you ginger. May have been a ginger, but you definitely had a soul. Story 55. Drunk and racing, he ended up killing all 4 of them in front of one of their homes. Rachel was his sister. Our town was super small and this everyone up for a long time, and yeah, he survived. Story 56. The choking game, but as her friend I honestly kinda think it was suicide. She was hanging off a closet door, basically self-asphyxiated with a belt, but the parents made a big deal of this choking game thing and made a whole tour about it to news stations. Story 57. He was walking home after a party, and we lived deep in the hills back then. He stopped for a few minutes to have a rest. Someone came out of their house and shot him point blank in the chest with a shotgun. He was 15. Story 58. A semi-truck smashed into the freeway barrier when flying onto the local street and landed on top of my friend who was in a car with his siblings. Story 59. Driving a Jeep too fast around a dangerous bend in wet conditions. The other was killed by a drunk driver who then went on to kill someone else a few years later. Driving drunk again. She was lovely. Didn't know the Jeep guy, but he was very popular and his brother was also pretty popular. Story 60. He locked himself in a gun cabinet and used a shotgun to blow his brains out. He was 13. Got embarrassed at school earlier that day. His mom yelled at him in front of a girl that he had a crush on in the courtyard. Story 61. He tried to mug a pizza delivery driver with his buddies and the delivery driver shot and killed him. Rumor had it, this was his gang initiation. He was a nice kid, sat in front of me in English and let me copy his answers one time for a quiz. It was surreal when the news broke that he was dead. Can't blame the delivery driver at all. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Also, the white guy in the mugshot used to sack tap the out of me in middle school. Story 62. He had cancer. I'm not sure what kind of he had, but a friend of his who I follow on IG said he was cancer-free, but it came back and it was more aggressive and sadly lost his battle. He was a nice guy. Story 63. At a summer party he went out for a late-night swim with the others. He jumped headfirst and hit some stones below. When he got inside he was very tired and went for a rest on a couch. Never woke up again. It seemed very undramatic, but he fractured his neck during the jump. The school had a concert in his honoring as a last farewell. Story 64. Drowned. Walked towards the river talking about hearing God. Next time I saw him was in his parents' basement, stuffed in a wooden box with tissues up his nose to keep water from running out. Story 65. Shooting guns at water with his brother and his brother's bullet ricocheted off a rock into his head. He was a sophomore at the time. I worked with his best friend who was traumatized, and the most the school did for him was send him a notice he was going to be expelled for missing too much school. Story 66. Just finished 9th grade in TX, 1986. He went to New York to visit his grandmother for the summer. He was mowing her lawn when a woman driving by went into labor and lost control of her car and ran up into the yard and hit him. R.I.P. Craig. Story 67. Suicide by hanging. I guess his GF knew about it too and was sending him articles and on how to kill yourself successfully, or at least that was the rumor. Dude was a pretty funny kid and I'd say he was a friend. Rip Matthew. Story 68. Drove drunk, flipped his truck into a pond and drowned. Not that it makes it okay, but he was one of the biggest I have ever met. Again, I'm not happy about it, but we didn't lose the valedictorian that volunteered in his free time. Story 69. It was 2 of my friends, but 3 kids in my case. They were 14 and told a 24-year-old man to stop sleeping with one of their sisters who was 15. The 24 came in the middle of the night and killed 3 unarmed teens as they sleep. Story 71. Death plagued my class, the class of 2000. We had a classmate in middle school who stole a car and it's assumed suicided by crashing into an oncoming car on purpose to avoid being caught, killing himself and the occupants of the other car. A very popular, kind and sweet young woman died by self-inflicted gunshot sophomore year. No note, no bullying, no answers as to why one day she seemingly out of the blue took her life. Oh no, the kid died from an alcohol pill mixing overdose at a party junior year. A teammate of mine had helped his dad build an ultralight aircraft and both died in a plane crash on the test flight between junior-senior year. A classmate going to 0 hour fell asleep at the wheel in a tiny car and head-on collided with a full-size pickup. Both going 60, I was right behind him, second to get to his car but the only one to stay with him while he passed. And finally, one young woman disappeared late senior year and still has never been found to my knowledge after 25 years. But we don't know if she was abducted, ran away, or there was foul play. She had a troubled family. Story 71. He was shot dead buying weed about 2 blocks from his house. Died after leaving my school, but he would have been a senior, left after his sophomore year if I remember correctly. Story 72. One killed himself after attending a big party at some kid's house. Another was hit by a car a senior was driving during finals week. The seniors still took their finals and graduated. Story 73. One passed away from suicide. I spoke to her once or twice and she was always nice. She was 14 and had started high school a couple months before. Another one was murdered by her boyfriend her senior year. Didn't know her since she was the year above me. She was only 17. Not a student, but a teacher was killed in a hit-and-run while he was riding his bike. Died like a week into the school year. He had 10 kids too. One of the math teachers set up a memorial scholarship fund in his honor. Couldn't find any info on if they found the guy who hit him. Story 74. For some bar mitzvah rented a double-decker bus to get everyone to and from the party. Kids on the top deck had opened a hatch on the roof and were jumping to get their heads outside while on the highway. Kid got clipped by an overpass. Story 75. She got in a car on a cold winter day to deliver blankets to a neighbor whose power went out. Her car hit a patch of black ice and went down an embankment. She was a beautiful soul and an incredible person. Many people loved her and miss her every day. Story 76. Flipped a car on the way home from a Halloween party. No one was drinking, but he wasn't wearing a seatbelt and got ejected. I didn't know him well. He was the starting center on the football team, so they honored him by lining up around the ball on the first play, with him missing in the middle. They took a delay of game penalty on the first down, and the opposing team declined the penalty. It was really sweet in a weird southern football town kinda way. Story 77. His parents were neglectful. He was doing whippets in the dead of winter and wandered into his backyard and froze to death. It was truly harrowing for the whole school. Story 78. Lots of drunk driving accidents. A suicide. One was harrowing for the farm he worked at, and he was at an uncontrolled railroad crossing. A train was coming, but with enough speed he could beat the train. He didn't raise the harrow high enough and the teeth somehow got stuck in the tracks. The train hit half of the harrow and half of the tractor he was in and killed him. Story 79. Not high school, but when I was in 4th grade, the girl I walked to school with every morning was murdered by her father. He put both her and her brother to sleep with a drug, put them in the car in the garage and then turned on the engine. He went too. Word on the street is that he never got over their mom passing away. Story 80. Everyone made fun of him and started rumors he was doing drugs, which was why he started going bald and showing up less and less at school. It was announced by my teacher a few months later he passed away due to cancer. I'll always think about you, Bryce. Story 81. I wish it was only one kid. My graduating class and the one above it had at least half a dozen deaths, and those are just the ones I remember. Suicide, accidental overdose, accidents involving motor vehicles, drowning, etc. The amount of kids from my graduating class that have died since high school is just as depressing. So many suicides and so many overdoses. It feels like logging on to FB anymore is akin to reading the local obits. Story 82. He was a nice kid to me. Never had any issues. Never seemed to be in for what I knew. However, everyone knew he was an extreme pothead, and he got mixed in with the wrong crowd. He was out with his supposed buddies for a joyride. And apparently a dude in the back seat that he owed a ton of money to for drugs wasn't happy with him and shot him in the back of the head. Apparently they planned it. Story 83. 1 to suicide homophobic parents and no outside support. One in a car accident that prompted a new stop sign being added to an intersection that should have always had one, and one in a motorcycle accident. Story 84. The story I heard was that he was skateboarding at somebody's house party. He tried to grind on a concrete fountain they had in the backyard, but he fell and hit his head, no helmet, killing him pretty much instantly. I assumed there was drinking involved, though I don't think the official story mentioned anything about it, so I don't know for sure. Story 851. Offed himself in the bathroom. One shot his pregnant GF who wanted an abortion, and then later that day killed himself. One hung himself from a tree after getting caught assaulting someone in his family. All same school, same grade, very small town, upstate New York. Story 86. My brother was that one kid who died cancer during his senior year. The yearbook dedicated a page to him, and there were a few other tributes that followed the next year while I was a freshman at the same school. I absolutely hated all of it because my brother would have disapproved of all of it. He was total contrarian metalhead rebel. But it was what my mom decided was best, and I guess ultimately it got her through. Story 87. Killed himself because he was gay in a time where being outwardly gay in a rural US town meant endless harassment. Honestly shocked he didn't shoot up the school with how bad the hazing was. I think about him at least weekly 17 years later. I came out as bi 8 years later. I was also endlessly bullied in high school. Guess I squeaked my way through, hiding and skipping school. Tiny cut on the leg. Nothing serious at all. It got kinda red and warm, and the school nurse didn't take it seriously and sent him on his way. The next day he was septic, and then died. It was mind-blowing to everyone that you can die from a little cut. I don't think many of us even knew what a staph infection was before that. I'm sure the people I grew up with take minor wound care a little more seriously than your average person. Story 88. Suicide by crashing his car after getting hammered at a campout. I didn't know him, but apparently he was struggling for a long time silently. Many people loved this kid. He was a beaming light of love and hope. Make sure to check in on your friends and family. You never know who's struggling and what they're struggling with. Story 89. She was traveling in the passenger seat through a rural country lane in England when all of a sudden a large tree branch fell on the car roof. Sadly she was in the wrong seat at the wrong time. She was a friend of a friend, but I had last seen her a couple of weeks prior to the incident at a mutual friend's board game gathering. She was a brilliant girl. Story 90. This happened a year or so after I graduated, but I still heard about it. But there were these seniors going about 70 miles per hour on a residential road near school on the last day of school, apparently high AF on pills, and they struck one of the freshman girls that was crossing the street. Pretty sad, and I see her lil memorial flowers and shrine at least once a week, cause it's on the way to my mom's house. Story 91. Car accident. He was going to play pickup basketball. He had a sports car and it was raining really hard and he collided with someone and died at the scene. It took parameters a while to get his door open to get to his body. I feel if they would have gotten his door open faster he would have survived. His was supposed to pick up his friend, but his friend fell asleep so the guy just went by himself. Story 92. Him went dirt biking and hit the crossbars hard which killed him. Good kid. Her epileptic seizure in her sleep. After getting her together and being able to graduate in time, they buried her with her diploma. Story 93. One died from cancer a month before graduation. The other died from a car accident. They said he wasn't wearing a seatbelt and flew out the windshield after a night out with friends.